Greetings, this is Charles Darwin, and I'm here to tell you about one of my favorite books when I was a young man, and that is Gilbert White's Natural History of Selborne. It was written in the late 18th century. This is an 1869 reprint that has been rebound, and so, but theoretically, since it's 1869, I could have seen this copy, even though it was long after its first publication. Now, Gilbert White was a clergyman who lived in Selborne, England. But he wasn't just a clergyman, he was also an amateur scientist, as most scientists were at that time. And this book has just lots and lots of observations in it, very close and careful observations of nature, mostly from his garden. He didn't just look at it and say, oh, this is pretty, I'm relaxing, but he looked and took notes on everything in his garden, including his pet turtle, Timothy. Now, one problem with this book from the 21st century viewpoint is that it is a pile of facts that is largely disorganized. And the problem with that is that how do you draw any conclusions from that? I wrote in the 19th century that in order for facts to be of any use, they have to be for or against some position. Now, as we would describe it in the 21st century, we have to test hypotheses with these facts. And a hypothesis is a statement about the way something works, and the facts either confirm or contradict that hypothesis, and that's what science is based on. That's explained in this book called Scientifically Thinking: How to Liberate Your Mind, Solve the World's Problems, and Embrace the Beauty of Science. It's written by Stanley A. Rice, and the author gave this to me, and he tells me that it's a really good book. Well, what do you expect him to say? He wrote it, of course. But anyway, it's kind of a pompous title, How to Embrace the Beauty of Science, Solve the World's Problems. Anyway, if you want to know more about how to test hypotheses, that is a good book for you to find a simple explanation. Now, it turns out that Gilbert White did test some hypotheses in his book. And the example that comes first to mind is about bird migration. Now, at the time that he wrote, nobody really understood that birds migrated. Now, they knew that in England, the birds that were there in the summer disappeared in the winter, at least most of them, but nobody knew where they went. Did they go hide in a hole someplace, or did they go bury themselves at the bottom of a lake? That was a real idea in the 19th century. But Gilbert White was able to test the hypotheses that birds migrated, that they would migrate south in the winter. And this is something we just take for granted today. But somebody had to figure that out, and Gilbert White was one of the people who figured that out. What he did was he not only made close observations in his garden, but he also had letters from lots of friends who traveled around the world. And some of these friends were in Africa, and they said, hey, guess what? In the winter, we found English birds in the winter that you find in England in the summer. From that, he concluded that birds migrate. And so we owe it to people like Gilbert White that we know such things that we now take for granted as the migration of birds. This is Charles Darwin. Tally ho, and amen.